Back to another Bible reading and discussion.
We're getting. Paul wanted to go to Rome.
Paul wanted to go to Rome. He prayed for it.
He did, and
He said, "I'll be there."
goodness knows he did get the trip.
We are starting that journey.
All expenses paid by Rome.
He's going to meet all the popular figures, the people in power.
Yeah.
They're just going to kind of parade him around.
Yeah.
But in chains.
Oh well.
So Paul's, he's before the council. He's before the Sanhedrin. And he's about to go before the chief priests and high priests.
This is big stuff. It's interesting.
There's some contention
Just a little bit.
here, so we'll jump right in.
All right. Paul, looking intently at the council, said, "Brethren, I have lived my life with a perfectly good conscience before God up to this day." Let's pause there for a minute. One verse in.
Yeah.
Was he right in what he had been doing? No. Was he doing it in good conscience? Yes.
See, and
What does that mean?
And I think that is why God could use him.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have this notion that, because God chose Paul, he was going to be this way. And I tend to think that God gave us human free will, that because Paul was a certain way, not perfect, obviously a sinner, he believed chief of all sinners, struggled with the flesh, right? Romans 7, all that kind of stuff.
No.
But yet,
He's not a
his
typical
intentions,
Pharisee in this.
his intentions and his
intention was to do
conscience,
the
he
right
thought
thing.
he was doing right. And if you take an honest person who thinks
Yes.
they're doing right and you just point them towards the truth, they're going to be, I'll say a reckoning for good.
Damascus Road, he realizes, I've been wrong. He was a wretched man at that point. We find out from Romans 7. But now he realizes that not only was he wretched, he was wrong, and it helped to crucify the Messiah and try to wipe out the church.
Well, there's a reason why the Lord is using Paul and not Ananias here, who's the high priest. Paul was able to be used,
Yes.
right?
And I think that's another thing. He could see in his foreknowledge that Paul would eventually figure it out. So he's expediting something. I don't think it would have been fair, if you will, if he'd have done that, and otherwise he wouldn't have ever seen the light, so to speak. But he was wretched. He was looking. I think this would happen, but he needed him sooner than later.
Yeah, and if God, can see, once again, how we would respond to the gospel, and he wants to make a spectacle out of it and make it a little early, knowing what our decision, hey, feel free. And he is God.
Yep. Reminds me of the David Farr joke. Man went into the lens factory, fell into the machine, and made a spectacle of himself.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, we are using this in this way, but there are people who saw almost greater things than Paul did, and yet did not believe.
No.
So it's not that Paul's being unique in the sense of he's seeing something that other people haven't seen already, the risen Lord. A lot of people have seen the risen Lord. Some people have accepted, some people have rejected. Some people saw great miracles, they saw great works, and they still rejected. So we need to understand that we think Paul's getting a special treatment here. In this day and age, that's just something that's going on.
Yeah, it's happening.
These things are happening.
He's not high-handed. He is not high-handed.
Yeah.
He means well.
So there's
mean
verse
well
1.
doesn't mean you do well, but it does mean you're different from somebody who's high-handed, and that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
The high priest, Ananias, commanded those standing beside him to strike him in the mouth. Ooh. Then Paul said to him, God is going to strike you, you whitewashed wall. Do you sit to try me according to the law, and in violation of the law order me to be struck? But the bystander said, do you revile God's high priest? And Paul said, I was not aware, brethren, that he was high priest. It was written, you shall not speak evil of the ruler of your people. This is an interesting little thing too, isn't it?
And I've got several, I don't really know where I land exactly on the interpretation here, but I do have some suspicions. One, the way Paul was brought before the council by a Roman tribune, it's almost like a Roman court. He's being entered in. It's not during the time of what your normal court would be. And so the Sanhedrin or the high priest may not even be in his proper gowns and
stuff.
robes, and so Paul. I don't think it's not that Paul wouldn't have recognized him. Him being a Pharisee of Pharisees, I think he probably knew the powers that be. But I think especially since I think he's challenging what he's doing in the sense if you were a true ruler,
Yeah.
if you were the true high priest,
Then I wouldn't have said
you would
that. Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
this would not
This
be
is wrong.
happening the way that what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of a snarky way, in a sense, some sarcasm. That's kind of how
And
I
that'll work.
tend
Yeah.
to see it.
Or he just mouthed off at him. And
Or him out though. And remember, the high priest position switches.
yeah.
You know.
And there is something here about respect for rulers.
Yeah.
Under normal circumstances, well, like even Nero gets, he's not called by name, but we're told to honor the king and obey the laws and pay the taxes. And Nero is the emperor, and we don't have any New Testament led, let's get rid of this guy, or let's try to, because they're constantly getting rid of Caesars and everything.
Yeah.
It's no, just pray that you're able to do what you need to do as a Christian and go on about your business.
Well, yeah, and Paul's kind of serving as a prophet here in a sense because, normally you would not speak against rulers, but, look at Nathan coming to speak against David, right? Look at Samuel coming to speak against Saul. There's got to be somebody who's speaking on behalf of God who can even hold the rulers accountable.
Yeah, and God does, and it's his call, if you will. If we work within that, we're good.
Yeah.
If we decide to go on our own, not so much. But perceiving that one group were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, he's a clever fellow, this Paul.
He's going to use his leverage.
Yeah. Paul began crying out in the council, "Brethren, I'm a Pharisee, a son of Pharisees." And the Pharisees were by far outnumbering the Sadducees and were out amongst the people and had a lot to do with controlling synagogues. "I am on trial for the hope of the resurrection of the dead." As he said this, there occurred a dissension between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, because they just had a dissension all the time. And the assembly was divided, for the Sadducees say there's no resurrection, nor an angel, nor spirit. But the Pharisees acknowledged them all. And there occurred a great uproar, and some of the scribes and Pharisees party stood up, began to argue heartily, saying, "We find nothing wrong with this man. Suppose a spirit or an angel has spoken to him."
See, these people are so worked up
Yeah, boy.
that Paul can just turn the needle a hair, and all of a sudden
He's good. He's okay. He didn't do anything.
it's this built up anger and tension that they're just. But the funny thing is this is how normal court would be anyway. The Pharisees and Sadducees would normally not be on the same side of it, and the fact that they're
Just
actually coming
because.
together shows the power that Paul is having over the people.
Oh, this is big.
Very much like Jesus did, and he turns usually people who are enemies of each other, or at least antagonists towards one another.
Yeah, you see that with Jesus in his crucifixion.
Yeah, and Paul uses the resurrection because Sadducees don't believe in the resurrection.
As you said, politics makes strange bedfellows.
Yes.
And it does. And here we have an example of that. Paul, having gone over to the enemy as a big deal guy himself, is huge.
Yeah.
He was a mover and shaker. He was an up-and-coming guy, and he's trying to get rid of these Christians. And everybody, yeah. And next thing you know, he's one of them. So this has caused quite the stir. Well, there's a dissension that's developing. The commander was afraid Paul would be torn to pieces by them and ordered the troops to go down and take him away from them by force and bring them to the barracks. This is a biggie.
Here's another thing, and they're holding court while Roman soldiers are the ones keeping him in chains.
Yeah.
It's just something's not
It's
right
just
here.
so ironic. No,
Yeah.
it's not. But on the night immediately following, the Lord stood at his side and said, "Take courage, for as you have solemnly witnessed to my cause at Jerusalem, so you must witness at Rome also." So he's going to get to go to Rome. So there were, but there's more.
Yeah.
When it was day, the Jews formed a conspiracy and bound themselves under an oath, saying that they would not eat or drink until they had killed Paul. So serious. There were more than 40 who formed this plot. They came to the chief priests and the elders and said, "We have bound ourselves under a solemn oath to taste nothing until we've killed Paul." I wonder if they starved to death recently after this. I don't know.
So
Probably not.
they're taking, kind of some cues from the zealots here. They're they're kind of, because Zealots are another sect that normally wouldn't be in this group, but they were
They're probably just sitting off to the side saying, well, do we have to do anything? These are taking care of.
They're usually the people who are, we'll kill them,
Yeah, I got that. Yeah, no. Now, therefore, you and the council notify the commander to bring him down to you, as though they were going to determine his case by a more thorough investigation. And we, for our part, are ready to slay him before it comes near the place. So they got everything worked out. But the son of Paul's sister heard of their ambush. He came and entered the barracks and told Paul. Paul called one of the centurions and said, lead this young man to the commander, for he has something to report to him. So he took him and led him to the commander and said, Paul, the prisoner, called me to him and asked to lead this young man to you, since he has something to tell you. The commander took him by the hand and, stepping aside, began to inquire of him privately, what is this that you have to report to me? And he said, the Jews have agreed to ask you to bring Paul down tomorrow to the council, as though they were going to inquire somewhat more thoroughly about him. So do not listen to them, for more than 40 of them are lying in wait for him, who have bound themselves under a curse. Interesting policy. A lot of times when you see people cursing in the Bible, they say, let this come on me if I don't do what I say, as opposed to what we think of cursing.
Yeah.
Not to eat or drink until they slay him. And now they are ready and waiting for the promise from you. So the commander let the young man go, instructing him, tell no one that you've notified me of these things. So
you just see the hand of God here.
Yeah.
Even working, a Roman tribune who's allowing this young boy to come in and talk to one of his prisoners.
God's got this, doesn't he?
He's just guiding all of this, and he told Paul, I'm gonna take you. I'm taking you to Rome.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get you there.
And he's going.
Yeah.
Is it your turn?
Yep.
Okay.
Then he called 2 of the centurions and said, get ready 200 soldiers with 70 horsemen and 200 spearmen to go as far as Caesarea at the 3rd hour of the night. Also provide mounts for Paul to ride and bring him safely to the Felix the governor. So even as a prisoner, he's not having to walk. He's
got an armed escort. He's outgunning these 40 guys. I wonder what they're thinking when they see all this.
Who is this guy?
Oh, wait a minute, we can't eat until we kill him.
Yeah. Why does Jesus say let your yes be yes?
Yes, you know, we know.
And so if they were really following this all the way through, they probably should have starved to death.
Yeah, but
they probably
I don't think they do.
And he wrote a letter to this effect: Claudius Lycia, to his excellency, the governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized by the Jews and was about to be killed by them when I came upon them with the soldiers and rescued him, having learned that he was a Roman citizen. And desiring to know the charge for which they were accusing him, I brought him down to their council. I found that he was being accused about questions of their law, but charged with nothing deserving death or punishment. Imagine
like Jesus, isn't it?
Well, imagine what they saw. Like, okay, we're going to figure out, and they're all in unison. Yeah. Paul kind of redirects, and now they're trying to save him. It's like, all right, let's get out of here. This is going crazy. So the soldiers, according to their instruction, took Paul, brought him by night to Antipatris. What? Sure. Is that what yours says? Verse 31. Antipatris.
Oh, I didn't turn my page.
All right.
Antipatris,
Antipatris, all right.
It's not Patris, but Antipatris.
I'm sure there's a Greek somewhere out there
somewhere
crying in his grave. And on the next day they returned to the barracks, letting the horsemen go on with him. When they had come to Caesarea, delivered the letter to the governor, they presented Paul also before him. On reading the letter, he asked what province he was from, and he learned that he was from Cilicia. And he said, I will give you a hearing when your accusers arrive. And he commanded him to be guarded in Herod's praetorium. So that's one of the good things about, we base a lot of our judicial system and our due process on actually Roman law and governing.
We got a lot of that from the Persians, of all people.
And even the Greeks have a lot to add. So all these systems are building almost I was listening to this podcast earlier this morning, talking about how God is moving even the world through all these different agents and powers into a more just system. And even today, though there's a lot of problems with our justice system, I understand there's a lot of corruption that goes on, but I don't think you can find
Yeah.
a better justice system out there.
Rulers, as a general rule, just do whatever they want to. They want to kill you, they kill you. You don't have due process. You don't get Mirandized or anything like that. There are a lot of things, as many flaws as you might find. It's a good place to be if you've got a matter before the law.
You know, like imagine living under a king and like, oh well, what's fair? I don't care what's fair. How off with your head?
Yeah, bam.
Reminds me of the
And
Alice in Wonderland.
yeah, off with their head.
Off with their head. But there's Paul. He's now he's going to start going before all of the Roman governors and officials,
Moving his way along.
and then he's going to go to Rome and be under house arrest and spend some time there.
He gets to tell his story to some very important people. I'm sure he's wondering what's going on here.
Yeah.
What's it going to turn out to be?
And if you want to know how Paul thinks about it, read some of his prison epistles, where he's explaining to people, hey, you think this is a bad thing. I'm taking full advantage of this.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm preaching to people. preaching
Writing
to God
letters and everything.
that I would never have been able
Get the
to.
Praetorian Guard and wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's Acts chapter 23. Once again, it's just Paul going to keep making his defense over and over again. And we're going to see some different highlights of it. He's going to say it different ways. And you learn some, different things each time you read it. So, but we hope you have a great day. Hope you enjoyed that. Go ahead and like, share, and comment. Always let us know that you're here. Let us know you're listening. And if you like this material, go ahead and share it with those you know and those whom you love. It's a good conversation starter.
Have a few minutes looking at Scripture.
Absolutely. So we love you.